Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined by BadgerBlitz.com publisher, editor-in-chief, and all-around college football, or at least Wisconsin guru, John McNamara. Great to see you as always.
Good to see you too, Matt.
So as we are recording this here on early afternoon Monday, the Badgers just got a pretty big commitment, both in terms of physicality and in terms of need for Wisconsin. So Xavier Okponu, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. If I'm not, I am very sorry. We will do our best, and I promise to learn how to pronounce it over the course of the next 4 years. That being said, John, how did this all come together? Because he didn't even take an official to Wisconsin.
No, but he did visit July 26th. But I will say, I know the bulk of the kids who visit ahead of time, but I did not know that he was visiting on that date. That's why, when I did kind of a write-up on it, I called it a sneaky good commitment for the Badgers because, like I said, going back to July, I don't think anyone knew that he was visiting. So Wisconsin gets him on campus, and really they sealed the deal after that visit because we got word right after that visit that he was going to then commit to Wisconsin on August 5th. So we knew about the commitment, didn't know about the visit, but overall, this is a huge gift for the Badgers. You can't have enough defensive tackles, and this kid's a true defensive tackle. 6'3", 300 pounds. I wouldn't call him like a big plugger, but he's going to play on the interior, and he's going to give you something that you need in the class that already included Torn Petaway, who, he's at 285 pounds, but I think he's likely an end. And then Wilnerson Telemak, who, 6'6", 250 is likely an end too. So a really nice piece to finish this defensive line class, and a great win for first-year defensive line coach E.J. Whitlow.
Yeah, and the thing that stands out about him is his strength. I think there was a tweet earlier today that he broke the Denton High School or Geyer High School, Texas record for bench press, and that is a program that has put out a ton of high Division I players in its history. It's one of the more storied programs in the state of Texas. So that's a really good sign, I think, for Wisconsin. That I think just looking at him, he's raw technique wise, right? But he is clearly very strong and just learning to use his leverage. And I think that once he really gets, sort of in not just the strength and conditioning, but the actual defensive line technique coaching, he is going to be someone who could be truly an impact player on the inside. At Geyer, he's mostly lining up as sort of like a 3-eye kind of guy and not really on the interior of the defensive line. Like you said, he's not like a plugger. He's not a Levi Sekapolu, but right. He is someone who is going to be able to, use his strength, penetrate, and hold up blockers. You see him hold up blockers actually really well. I think that's one of the things he does, is occupy blockers. And that's what Wisconsin really needs out of their defensive tackles in this 3-3-5 alignment. So I think that Badger fans should be very excited about this addition. We see him lining up here, at a wide 9. We're not going to see a whole lot of that once he is in a Badger uniform. That being said, he has shown that he can get to the pass rusher, and he has shown that he has the strength. He has a strong base. So I'm excited to see what he can do once he gets into Madison. So John, does that sort of round out then defensive line you would imagine for this 2025 class?
Yeah, unless something pops up in the fall that's really unexpected. They're at 22 right now. You could really say 23 because Eric Schmidt's going to be on scholarship, the kicker, in just a couple months. So I think if you're being safe, you say this class is at 23. And then he maybe gets to 24. I'd say likely gets to 24 if Wisconsin could get Zay Gentry, the cornerback from Texas. And those two, I don't know how connected they are, but, Zay went and tweeted at Xavier. And those two are obviously familiar with each other and from the state of Texas. So I think Wisconsin would love to finish the class with Gentry. That puts him at 23/24. And, that's a pretty high number. But if you look, I think they have 26 scholarship seniors. So it's not anything that they can't manage through and then have a lot to still work with in the transfer portal as well. But so, like I said, to answer your question, yeah, I think they're done on the defensive line unless something really unexpected comes about. And then maybe they have one more spot, and I think that spot's pegged for Zay Gentry to potentially finish the class as a cornerback for the Badgers.
I think Badger fans and the recruiting department would be pretty happy if that was, the final group that they ended up getting. A lot of high upside guys, I'd say. I think we're seeing more raw athleticism in this class, especially than we have, in years past. Like I said, Okponu, I think, at least to my eye, obviously I'm not you, I'm not Clint, but, I don't have the same, background on that, but I've been watching enough tape over the past 20 years to know sort of like what I'm seeing. He's a strong guy, but he needs some work technique wise. He stands up too fast, but in doing so, he often occupies blockers really well. So, and we also don't know exactly what he's asked to do in that scheme that they are running in that specific position they have, because he's playing more of a defensive end there for Geyer. But enough about 2025. Let's move to 2024. Badgers have been in camp for a week in Platteville. John, a lot going on at camp. I guess everyone wants to know, and start with the quarterbacks. So why don't we do that as well? John, a lot of people expected Tyler Van Dyke to separate himself, but it sounds like Braden Locke is right there in the mix still. He's been in the offense for a year, really heady kid, really smart kid. But, I still think the sort of prevailing wisdom or wisdom of the crowd maybe was that Van Dyke was going to come in and be QB1, but it doesn't look like that's quite been the case just yet. What have you seen from the quarterbacks in your time there, and also in talking with other media members who have been at these practices?
Yeah, we got a chance to listen to Luke Fickell talk after their scrimmage on Saturday. And look, he made it a point to say we're trying to get these guys equal reps and equal opportunities, and you saw that in the scrimmage. So this battle will continue on into week 2. I guess when the dust settles, I have a hard time believing it's not going to be Van Dyke. Again, that's not a guarantee. They have not come out and said anything. They have not tipped their hand to make anyone believe that, but I guess I would find it hard to believe that Van Dyke's not your starter. So the question is, when do you turn the keys over fully? When do you allow Van Dyke, if it is Van Dyke, again, it could very well be Braden Locke, I suppose, but when are you going to turn the keys over to the projected starter and start giving that person, the bulk of the reps there, and really start to do some, full-time install for this offense to give that guy the bulk of the rest? Because like I said, they've really kind of been splitting as of right now. And one thing Luke Fickell mentioned is that he feels good about that because unlike what they had in the spring, they feel like they have 2 solid offensive lines, a first group and a second group. Now, obviously the first group is light years ahead of where the second group is, but the second group is light years ahead of where they were in the spring. So, you've seen Van Dyke kind of work with the quote unquote ones, and you've seen Locke work with the quote unquote ones, and vice versa there. So, nothing solid. I don't know that we'll maybe know anything until the depth charts release, just ahead of week 1. But my money's on Van Dyke, and I think it's been on Van Dyke since he committed via the transfer portal.
All right. Well, let's stay there. I think one of the more talked about position groups of the offseason outside of the quarterback obviously was offensive line, because they underperformed in 2023. New offensive line coach, 2 new offensive line coaches effectively now in both AJ Blazek and Casey Rabach, who is now an on-the-field coach. John, what's been the sort of vibe around the offensive line in that first week, and how are they taking to not 1 but 2 new coaches?
I think that pairing has been very good. Obviously, it's just been a week with them working together, but, getting a chance to be on the field, seeing them interact, and just hearing, AJ talk about Casey and Casey talk about AJ and vice versa. I mean, I think they're very much just kind of in lockstep with each other. And look, that's a position group right now with, I think, 20 guys. So allocating another body, allocating someone who's played at that level, who's played at the pro level, doesn't necessarily have that coaching experience, but I think that's huge for as many guys as you're working with there. And really, look, going back to when AJ Blazek took over, the expectation was that this group would improve. And I think you've seen some of that, in fall camp, and I think you'll see a lot of that as the season kind of unfolds. So I think it's a great move to put Casey there. like I said, those two work well together. I think it's going to pay dividends for Wisconsin. Is it going to be Wisconsin's best offensive line ever? I'm not saying that. I think a big piece of this is they have to stay healthy. They were able to do that this year. This past year. I think it's asking a lot to say, yeah, we're going to be able to keep our starting five intact this year. You'd like to see them maybe go a little deeper, especially in games where you feel like, the game is, kind of in hand, or Wisconsin feels good. It's something I think they could have done a little bit last year, although they were in a lot of tight games, so they didn't have a whole lot of cushion in a lot of those games. So, they have a good starting five. Beyond that, there are a ton of question marks. And I think that a lot of this fall camp is to find out, can we go 6? Is there a 7th? And maybe there's an 8th of guys that you feel comfortable about playing on Saturdays this fall.
I mean, I think we know who the starting 5 is, but who do you think are those 6, 7, and 8 right now that they would, feel confident in after what we presume is Nelson, Brunner, Renfro, Huber, and Malman?
Yeah, I think if an interior guy went down, you'd probably feel good about JP Benjwal playing, either left guard or right guard. Corey Kadonko, I think they feel good about playing. Look, if Jake Renfro went down, you could slide Huber there, but it wouldn't shock me if they put Kadonko in there and said, we feel good about this guy. He had a great spring. He's having a good fall. Let's see what he can do there. Tackle's a little different. I think if one of those tackles went down, they'd start to shuffle a bit. I think they'd stick Huber out there, either at left or right tackle. I think he's kind of the Swiss Army knife there. I don't know that you can put Kevin Haywood in just yet in a game that, is close. Look, can you put Haywood in if you're up by 4 scores in one of these early non-conference games? Sure. What do you got to lose there? But in a Big Ten game, I think if a tackle did go down, I think they'd slide Huber out there. They put Benchwall in for his spot. I think they'd have to have some moving parts there because it's Haywood or Barrett Nelson, but we haven't seen a ton of Barrett Nelson, although he is healthy this fall after missing all of spring camp.
And that's where the Leighton Thomas injury or Lynn Nelson injury hurts a lot. And I think that is, like you said, like they have to absolutely stay healthy. Let's, flip over to the defense. A lot of new faces, especially in the linebacker room. And, we saw one of them, Jaheim Thomas, make some big plays, but also saw freshman Darrion Dupree, who's been the talk of camp, also, sort of come in and make some big plays on him, or at least one that was caught on tape. What have we seen out of these new linebackers so far, especially, I was going to say Jaheim Thomas in the middle, but, there are guys everywhere in the linebacker room.
The room is completely different. You start on the inside and, Muma and Jordan Turner, just, you don't need to beat a dead horse there, but guys that just weren't great fits. Now you look at it's completely different. You have Jake Chaney, who's a returnee, but he's looked great. Specifically, I think it was in the Thursday practice. I mean, really getting into the backfield from the interior of that offensive line. He's looked very good. He's thick, he's twitchy, he's the leader of that defense. I think he's in line for a big season. Jaheim Thomas, like you talked about, he starts on the inside, but he's a guy that can play on the edge if you need him to, depending on down and distance. Big, physical guy that has played a lot of football, and he's played football in the SEC. So, I mean, that speaks kind of volumes, and obviously he has that connection with the coaching staff as well. So I think those are probably your pegged projected starters there. But behind them, Tackett Curtis, we didn't see much of him in the spring, but he's been healthy in the fall. And then Christian Allegro, I think he's similar to Thomas in that, big, long, rangy guy on the inside, but you could stick him outside if you need to. And then if you need to go beyond that, a fifth guy like Sebastian Cheek. So I think it's a very good football player, but I don't know how much of him you see this year because of how much the room has transformed, via the transfer portal.
Yeah, next year they'll have some more open spots there with, I think, both Thomas and Chaney being being gone after this coming year is what I would imagine. I think Thomas might have one more year of eligibility. I don't remember off the top of my head. Either way, though, we've seen, also at the outside linebacker position, John Pius is a name that a lot of people have been talking about. He's bulked up even more after being an FCS All-American at William & Mary last year. Leon Lowry from Syracuse, but also Daryl Peterson seems to have sort of really stepped up as at least a leader of the outside linebacker position.
I agree. It's Peterson, it's Pius, who, like you talked about, I think he's up to 250 pounds right now. Leon Lowry. I mean, those guys are going to play a ton of reps. Unfortunately, we haven't seen Aaron Witt yet during fall camp. I don't know.
He's an enigma, man. Yeah. I swear, someday in a different alternate reality where Aaron Witt stays healthy, that kid, a lot of people said, he has all the raw talent in the world. But man, there are very few guys I can remember who have been bitten by the injury bug as bad and as many times as Aaron Witt in the past 20 years.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he was able to go at the start of the spring, and then you thought he got a little nicked up at the end, and then we just haven't seen him in the fall. Luke Fickell was asked about that. He said something like 7 to 10 days. I don't, you just don't know. But with that, that's kind of opened the door for Tommy Turbo, Thomas Heiberger, who I think, like I've written about, I think he's going to play, at a bare minimum on special teams. But again, there's a long way to go. We don't know what's going on with Aaron Witt, but I think that Thomas Heiberger could very well be in the 2 deep when that official depth chart comes out. I think that he provides a little something that's probably too good to keep off the field this year, and he could be a guy that could very well be fighting for a starting job in year 2 with the program.
You mentioned Tommy Turbo Heiberger, the freshman, other true freshman. I mentioned Darrion Dupree earlier, but him and Xavier Lucas are the 2 guys who have come in, who are not there for spring ball, who have really sort of stepped their game up and been pushing some of the veterans. What have you seen out of, Xavier Lucas at cornerback?
Big, long, rangy kid. I think kind of what you thought he'd be. He's legit 6'2", 190 pounds. You had Ricardo Hallman talking about him at the local media day. When you hear, you hear a lot of stuff during media day. I was there, and but there's certain ththings that you hear where you're like, oh, I got to get that on Twitter because people are just going to eat this up. And, when he said, I can't believe they let him get out of the state of Florida. Well, that was like, it's just like throwing meat out to a bunch of sharks. I mean, people ate that up, but I mean, it's legit, right? I mean, you have the top cornerback in the room talking about an incoming freshman, and I think the sky is truly the limit for him. And I say that knowing that we have not seen him play a single snap of college football, but with that skill set, the way he runs, the God-given ability that he has, I don't think you tell Xavier Lucas, hey, we're going to redshirt we're going to redshirt you this year, because I don't think he's a 4-year type of guy. I think he's a guy that has true NFL ability, and maybe early in the draft type of ability, because all the things we talked about. So I think that you just have to get him on the field, get him going, get his feet wet, because that room's kind of going to, flip over at the end of this year due to graduation. And Xavier Lucas is a guy that will be fighting for a job, just like I think Thomas Heiberger in year 2.
And the other guy probably fighting for a job in year 2, starting, is going to be Darrion Dupree, because, you look at Tawee Walker and Ches Malusi are going to be out of eligibility. And he's been on the offensive side of the ball for freshmen. He's been the talk of camp.
Yeah, without a doubt. Sometimes you write about people and you feel like I'm writing too much about them, or you're overhyping someone, but watching the practices, that's what stood out. And he's special with the ball in his hands. And I know that you've had some guys, specifically Brian Calhoun, come on some of your other shows, and there's a little Calhoun to him, and that's a very high compliment. I think that Calhoun, not as big, Calhoun maybe a little shiftier, but there are certainly some comparisons there. I think the biggest takeaway that I had with Dupree after watching him is that he's thicker coming in than I anticipated him to be. And I had a chance to see him when he was, in high school down in Chicago. He looks the part. He's pretty well filled out for a kid that's just getting on campus in the summer. And he's just kind of special with the ball in his hands. And, media asked Kenny Guyton about it, even though Kenny Guyton's not in his room. And he's like, his face lit up, right? I mean, he's just like, this kid's special when he's got the ball in his hands. So he's another one where I don't think you can say to him, hey, look, let's put you on ice for a year. He's just not that caliber of player. And you've seen him take reps with the first team. You've seen him get some reps in the return game. He's just seems like a guy that they're going to try to get him on the field in any way that they possibly can, because like you said, Matt, he could very well be your starting tailback in year 2 with the program.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this. Which non-starter do you think has made the biggest gains from last season to this season, or from spring to now?
Oh man, that's a good question there. Non-starter. Oof. Man, these are the questions. You got to give me those type of questions ahead of time.
Go for it.
How about a guy like Ben Barton, who has really been mentioned as, there's Kurt Neal, there's James Thompson Jr., and then Barton's really been mentioned in that top tier. Although, I think if you see a lot of 2-down linemen, Neal and Thompson are going to be your top 2 guys. But, Ben Barton's been mentioned in that group too, of like, hey, these are our 3 guys we feel pretty good about. So, just, I guess that's the first one that kind of pops off the top of my head, is a guy who, I don't know that he's going to be a big time impact player, but he's a guy that could eat up a lot of snaps for you this fall. And I think that's something that they're looking to do. And, in a room where EJ Whitlow wants to play, a solid rotation of like 6 guys, Ben Barton's going to be very important in that. And I think that, when the season's over, you could see him as one of the top guys in the defensive line in terms of snaps this fall, if he stays healthy, obviously, of course.
Final question. How does the safety rotations shake out with Austin Brown, Kamoy Latu, and Preston Zachman?
That's a good question. Austin Brown took a lot of those slot or nickel snaps, but Max Lofey's looked very good. So if Max Lofey stays healthy, I think he eats up a lot of those. But, I think you like the ability to flip-flop there, Lofey in downs where Lofey's more comfortable in nickel. And then, I guess stuff maybe a little bit closer to line of scrimmage, you can put Austin Brown up there, and kind of flip-flop those 2 based on what you need, in terms of down and distance for the other team. Let's start at the top. You're going to play Hunter Wohler as much as you possibly can. I don't think you need to play every single snap like he basically did last year. But he's going to be out there. And look, I wrote about this. He's 6'2" and 218 pounds. He looks like a linebacker. Like if he walked out with the inside linebacker room, you wouldn't blink twice, because he just looks the part. So if he can play at that weight and, kind of maintain all the things that make him special, I mean, he could be an all Big Ten type of guy this year. Preston Zachman had a very good practice on Thursday, had 2 picks. So I think he's going to be there if healthy. Latu is, I think he's kind of a prove-it guy of look, we know you like to hit hard. We know you like to take chances, but like you can't kill us on those type of things. And he brings the physicality. I mean, they were in shoulders and helmets, or helmets and shoulder pads, and he's still hitting you just about as hard as you possibly can in those situations. He's punching at the ball. So he brings that element to it. But if that gets you in trouble like it did last year, maybe he's your 4th one, just because of he's just kind of got that boomer bust type mentality on the field. And he's more than willing to come up and try to make a big play. But if it comes over the back top of him, that's happened before, right? So a lot of Wohler, a lot of Brown. I think you'll see a lot of Zachman, and then Latu is just kind of the wild card there. If he can clean up the tackling, if he can play a little bit more under control, they got 4 really good safeties, and Braden Moore's been good in the fall camp as well. I don't know how many snaps are going to be available for him, but that's a very good veteran room that should, like I said, should be good this fall for Alex Grinch.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to me, at least, to see how that all shakes out and how the rest of the depth chart and everything else turns out after fall camp in Platteville. We will be here on BadgerBlitz TV to break it all down for the best information and most up-to-date reporting, information, insider news. Make sure you are subscribed to BadgerBlitz and joining us in the Badgers Den for the best discussion boards anywhere in the known Badger universe. Until next time, he's John McNamara, and I'm Matt Perkins, and we'll see you in the den.